super expensive.
Yeah.
And the only problem was after like years and years of playing, the knob on the arcade stick turned into like glue. I guess it started to deteriorate. You know, like the oils from your hand kind of breaking it apart. But yeah, that was an awesome controller because you got like a great value out of it. It was for 3 consoles. Even I only owned 2, you know, but it was also an extra controller. So if you had a friend come over, you could, you know, you had an extra controller.
Cool, man. Pori, what's your number 2 controller?
So my number 2 is continuing with the Nintendo theme, is the N64 controller for a few reasons. It added, hey, Chris, don't shake your head at this. It added more it added more buttons to it. Again, I like more buttons to controller. It's like the first one that does is each new generation adds more options. Like you said, Doug, compared to today, you know,
every
this is where
the same.
Right, this is where it started. So you had the C buttons plus the B and A. You had the really cool Z trigger at the bottom. It's a reverse controller that made it feel like you're actually like firing a gun.
Right.
It was pretty cool. But
especially when you put the Rumble Pack on it.
Exactly. Another thing I'm going to, a Rumble Pack feature. How great was that? Right? And then you've got the 3 prongs. Like a lot of skeptics when it first came out, how could you use this controller? Well, depending on what game you play, you hold it differently.
Right.
Pretty sharp. Right?
Loved it. I loved it.
I just, right there, again, just a really cool feature that you used, and I just got so comfortable with it, considering it has my favorite game on there, but that's a story for a different day.
Okay.
I've got to jump in.
Come on.
The worst controller ever designed.
I disagree so bad.
Crazy.
You know what? Let's put more buttons on. Yeah, let's just have a Jaguar controller.
Let's
bring the Jaguar controller back. I mean, why not? It's got 55,000 buttons on it. No, this controller
but they also look like a phone.
This is the worst controller. I hated this 64 controller. It was really cool because you had a trigger on it. So when we played GoldenEye, that was really awesome. But I don't need all these extra buttons. You bring in all these extra buttons in because they were just extra buttons. Now, granted, in my defense, and in your defense as well, I did not own a 64. So yes, I only did experience it when I was over someone else's house.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so when I didn't play a lot of games, we only played the multiplayer games, you know, like your Mario Party and your Bond and stuff. So like I really can't say I have much experience with it, but what I have experience with, which is, you know, a lot of hours, thank God, because you guys had me over, but that is the worst controller ever designed. Anyway, Doug, back to you.
So
the analog was sweet.
my number 1 is actually the Nintendo 64 controller.
Yes!
It really is. It was a tough choice between this and the Xbox One Elite, but again, like it feels good either way. Like I don't get how somebody could not, like, it feels good. Like, so you figure your hands will be too close together if you played with the analog stick, but your fingers don't touch, man. I'm a grown man. My fingers don't touch right here. I have perfect access to every button. Where the Z trigger is in the back, and the way it feels in my hand right now is like a super dog bone controller. It feels perfect still to this day. My hand goes across the top. I'm holding the, you know, like this. This seems like it could be a little bit long, right? But it's not. It feels perfect. Playing fighting games on it, didn't have too many fighters but it had like, it had Killer Instinct Gold. The D-pad is great on this controller. And, again, I have 6 face buttons laid out like an arcade controller. Makes it even better that way. Of course, you had the L and R, which you'd only use L or Z, depending on how you played. I want to say there was at least 1 or 2 games where I pressed Z from the D-pad position back here. Though I don't remember what that would be. But I want to say something I had to do that with. For games like, you know, Jet Force Gemini, GoldenEye, it was fantastic. Now, it wasn't dual analog, so they had to use like the C buttons to move left and right in GoldenEye, which if you went back and played it now, besides me and Corey, it would be tricky to get used to that. But for me, it feels natural. And to be honest, it is kind of crappy to think about it that way. And it's funny because they had Unreal Tournament on Dreamcast. You had to do the same sort of thing with the buttons to strafe. But I feel like this is the best controller. Again, each player has a memory card slot for themselves, man, for whatever it is that you're playing. The Rumble Pack, which is kind of stupid, but that I had to have a separate thing for Rumble versus that's Nintendo. They like taking steps backwards. Came with Star Fox, man, but it felt great playing GoldenEye with the Rumble Pack. At the time, it added like a tiny bit of immersion because you're actually pulling a trigger in that game, especially when you use weapons that hit hard, like the Distavi or the PP9, like Unsilenced, man. It felt good.
Yep,
felt good for Star Fox. So this is my number one, and Corey, I totally expected backlash, not even from Chris, but from every single person who watches or listens to this. They're going to hate it. But when they had their 64, I bet you they loved it.
Right.
They loved it.
Right. Doug, now, correct me if I'm wrong. Was the 64 the first true analog?
No. PS2. It might have actually been PS1 with the DualShock. I know for PS1 for Metal Gear, the DualShock allowed you to travel an infinite amount of degrees around in a circle, like 360 degrees. But I don't know if there was a game where you could walk slow versus run. Because I know in Metal Gear, you run every time. You don't walk. Yeah. There may have been at some point, so it may be PS1 or PS2. But again, yeah, the analog, like, nobody had experienced it like this.
Right.
When you played Mario 64 for the first time, you couldn't even run straight.
I was just, like, creeping super slow. You could just, well, like, you had the ability to walk slow in that game. Yeah. Because of this analog. So, real quick, with Nintendo, a lot of the things that they created are staples in controllers today.
Yep.
Rumble Pack, this type of sensitivity with the analog. L&R controllers, buttons.
Yeah.
So...
It's all there.
Yes.
It's all there. So, yeah,
yeah.
I actually remember playing 64 first time ever at Blockbuster. They had a Mario 64 set up there. And I couldn't even run straight. It was so hard. I'm just running in circles and having so much fun with it. And But now it's a staple, man. Now it's second nature to have analog stick. Chris, what's your numero uno controller?
I'm so happy to be right now in the discussion because, like you said, Nintendo really kind of paved the way and everything. So with that said, the 64 came out in 95, 96? I think somewhere around there.
Later, right?
I don't know. But anyway, the number one controller in the world, everyone's list, is the Sega Dreamcast controller.
Okay.
That's number one. I mean, that's everyone knows this. You guys are just kind of, doing what you do. You just want to be different. You want to get off the beaten path. So, like you said, they allowed the 64 controller allowed everyone to have their own, memory slot. So the Dreamcast did that. You had your own VMU. Everyone can have their own VMU and their own Rumble Pack. Like, you can do all of that. You can add that. There was two options, two slots to stick things in on the controller. You had, now with the 64 controller, you had to move your hands to the whole thing or in the middle. So when you're holding it in the middle for the trigger, you don't even use the D-pad anymore. You lost the shoulder and you lost the D-pad.
Right.
The Dreamcast, you still got it all right there. It's get that scary cat out of here. Get that scary cat out of here. So, like, you had, with the Dreamcast, you have your analog and your D-pad. Like, everything's right there.
Okay.
Like, they built it. They built it so, like, hey, we have buttons. You can use everything whenever you want. Whereas Nintendo was like, we don't want you to use those buttons anymore because there's no reason to use those buttons because we're so ahead of the game. We know what players need.
But in 64, the thing about 664 is I've got more face buttons, man. I've got 2 extra face buttons to do things with.
Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah, sure. To do, to
wrestling, man. You use all of them in wrestling, and we played a ton of wrestling games.
You just hit the analog stick, and you stand up because that was really well designed.
No,
let's tell you that
we actually banned that while we played. You had to match your controller, but we banned the analog wake up on the No Mercy style games.
Yeah, because you could just hit that, and you would just get up.
Yeah, which is weird. I don't know why Aki and THQ did that. It was so stupid.
But yeah, anyway, the Sega Dreamcast is the number one controller. It had everything with it. The VMU, like you guys said, it's just the VMU added a whole other thing to it. I brought that thing to school. I brought it to school. I was taking care of everything. Like, that was my favorite thing. It's really nostalgic, but it's also like my favorite system ever designed. Like, everything with it is fantastic.
Yeah, I agree.
Except for the cord being on the bottom of it. They knew that was wrong, so they put a little channel up top so you can bring it down.
Yeah.
For all of our viewers right now, I'm going to show what he means is there's the cord stuck out the bottom of this controller, which doesn't seem like a big deal, but it does suck. So they put this thing here to put the wire in, but now you kind of look and feel like a dummy.
Yeah.
And it didn't work it doesn't work great. It feels,
and you lost like 5 inches of cord.
and it tugs, you can feel the tug on it. So, yeah.
So like they knew it was wrong, but they were like, you know what, we'll just put this little channel up top that'll hold,
We'll
like
just give
come
them
on,
options.
guys.
We'll give them options. Corey,
right.
What's your number one?
My number one, I don't want to feel like it's a cop-out because it's a current system right now.
Okay.
But it is the PS4 Pro controller.
PS4 Pro. Oh, is it different? Is it different?
They upgraded the analog sticks because it's not like the rubber nubs anymore, which obviously as you're playing they rip off and you have to buy replacements. It's not rubber anymore. And just that alone, I think, makes it to the next level. Okay. But going back to what Chris said, the format of a PlayStation 2 controller, that's it. It's perfect back then.
That's the formula.
That's it. That's the formula. And it's perfect now, but now they've just added more elements to it. You know what I mean? Yeah. You've got, obviously, the better motion controller. You've got a light in it, so when I'm getting shot, it lights up red. It seems like a little gimmick, but it just adds to it. Yeah. It has the speaker inside, so, when I'm getting, like, special messages, like, I think in Watch Dogs, you would get a special message or like a text message. It comes through my controller rather than my TV.
Which is interesting too. It's actually right here. I have one hand. There's a speaker right there.
It just adds this whole extra element to the game. Like I'm more involved in my game now because they're talking a specific message to me. Yeah. It's great. I want to play everything now on the PS4. Due to the fact the controller, I just really enjoy it. I just think, like I said, everything that we've said on this list, especially on mine up to this point, is incorporated in this controller, which is why it is my number one.
I've only had one game that's ever used that speaker a lot, and that was Metal Gear Solid 5, where when you're getting airdrops and stuff, all the chatter would come through there, and it seemed stupid, but man, it was pretty cool. Like. It was different, and it felt like kind of tinny, like how it should be coming through an earpiece back then. The PS4 controller, it's good. I'm not the biggest fan of it. I don't dislike it. It's not a bad controller. It's not like the original PS3 Batarang. Like that thing seemed like it was going to be horrible, and I'm so glad they changed it. But for me, again, it just goes on that like Sony side where I don't like the D-pad being separate buttons, but those things.
You're right. For fighting games, since I don't play them that often, I can see it not being the best.
Right.
But take that out.
But it's good, man.
If I need it's a standard controller, this is my standard best controller.
And also, what I love about PS4 is that touchpad that seems like it would be a total gimmick. Yeah. It adds 3 buttons kind of to it. It adds if you hold it and press it on left, center, or right. Those are different things that. Depending on where you hold it, counts as a separate button. Some games just have it so you just press the touchpad. I know Watch Dogs, which was terrible implementation, by the way. If you have your hand on it and you click right on the D-pad, like it changes the radio station. But it's good. It is great. I think it's weird how companies started weirdly shying away from start and select. Now I've got options and share. I didn't need a share button. Man.
I don't need that share button.
Share with your Twitter followers.
I don't need a button to bring up a specific button to bring up the recording options for my console. This is the whole Twitch thing going nuts. You know what I mean? Let that be on the PS button. You know what I mean? That's how I feel that should be. And the same thing goes. Oh shit! I actually turned it on by mistake. Same thing goes for the Xbox pads now. Instead of start and select, I've got menu and something. I don't even know what it is. It's just like these 2 little windows, but I don't need those things. I don't need those things at all. Also, one thing I forgot to mention real quick is on the Elite Pad there's a switch, which you can have 2 different button layouts, because you can design any button to anywhere with like the software. But yeah, I think PS4 pad is fantastic. I think it's a natural evolution of kind of the hard edged ones, and now it's very soft the whole way around. It has like the rubber back. I think it's cool, man.
Cool.
All right, you guys have any honorable mentions to go through? I do.